Thank you. I'm Nirupama Benis. I will talk about work done in a project called EJP RD, where we try to work with OHDSI to enable interoperability for rare disease research. But first, I will just explain all the acronyms in the title. So EJPRD is a European Joint Program for Rare Diseases. It is a rather big European project with over 130 institutions. They're not only scientific institutes, but also research funders, hospitals, and patient organizations. And they all work together to make sure that research results will reach the patients as quickly as possible. And rare disease research can be a bit tricky because there are so many uh, patients scattered all over Europe. There's only so many people with a particular rare disease in a country. So they really see the benefit of going fair, and actually the rare disease community in Europe is quite far in having fair data. And the other the resource that I will be talking about mainly today is called the European Reference Network. So the European Commission, they set up these 24 ERNs. They are virtual networks of rare disease experts who coordinate among themselves and with hospitals who actually take care of patients. And there are different ERNs for different types of diseases. So there's one for vascular anomalies. There's actually going to be a talk later today on from that ERN, and there's also an ERN for disease related to the eye or to the lungs, and they set up patient registries with all the information from patients who have that disease, and then they need to be able to share this data and perform research on it. The Joint Research Center from the European Commission, they have proposed a set of common data elements that rare disease patient registries have to collect. This is good for human interoperability because you know that these 16 data elements will be collected by other rare disease patient registries, so you know who to ask, you know what to ask others. But then this is not great for machine interoperability because this is basically a PDF on a website. So the EJP, we built a semantic data model around this CDEs. There are 12 modules that have RDF and SHEX representations. It's all up on GitHub. And we used the pattern from Semantic Science Integrated Ontology, SIO. So basically what we do is we have entity that has attributes, and it plays a certain role that is defined by a process. So to explain it properly, so there are this human being is an entity, and that human plays the role of a patient because when they are admitted in the hospital, and the human can have several attributes like birth date, blood pressure, things like that. And this is just one module for personal information. It looks a little scary, but it's just a representation, a graphical representation of the RDF data. So the main thing here is that the person has an ID, and that ID has a particular value, and also has a sex value and a birth date value. And these values themselves are actually represented by concepts from ontologies. So they're concept identifiers taken from SIO. The concepts birth date, female, and sex are taken from another terminology called NCIT. And this data model we want to use in the virtual platform that EJP is building. So this is a platform where we hope to connect several rare disease resources. So not only resources that have rare disease data, but also resources that can help with rare disease research. And one platform that holds not only rare disease data, but general health data is OHDSI OMOP. So they use their common data model. and they ask several data sources to convert their whatever models they have into the common data model, so that federated analysis can be done on all of these resources together, because they will all have the same format. And this common data model, this is just an overview of it. It is basically a tabular model. So there are several tables for each type of data, and they really promote the use of standardized vocabularies. They have a tool called Athena, which has a nice interface to browse these standardized vocabularies, which includes SNOMED, LOINC, ICD-10. And so our objective is that we have all of this rare disease data that is represented in the CD semantic model, and we have data that is shared on OMOP, which is observational patient data, can be from registries or ICU quality registries, and they are all represented in OMOP CDM. So we want to be able to move from both models to and fro, and with as little data loss as possible, of course. So we want to use terminology mappings and data transformation techniques to achieve this. We are, of course, not the only ones to do terminology mappings. There have been several issues that have been identified. So first, the most important one, of course, is accuracy. So do the two terms actually match? And this has to be based on the semantics of the term and its place in the terminology's hierarchy. And we have to make sure that the mapping itself is represented in a fair way, because you want to be able to do something with the mapping. You don't want to just have it lying around. And one very important thing is to make updates to the mapping when the underlying terminologies change. So the way we did our mapping was to do manual mapping. So we had a small team that used this Athena tool to look for terms that match to the terms that we use in the CDE data model. And for representing these mappings, we used the SSSOM standard, and this is a common standard for mapping representations. They use OWL and SCOS terms to define relationship between terms, and they also define how you should what the table should look like, the mapping table, and they can also convert it to RDF with their tools. And we had curation hackathons with semantic web specialists, modelers, and domain experts to verify the mappings that the smaller team made. And here again, we used Athena, OLS, and BioPortal to verify the accuracy of the mappings. So we had 48 terms in the CD semantic model from 9 ontologies or terminologies, and we were able to map 38 of them to OMOP CDM, and 29 of them were terminology mappings from 4 ontologies or terminologies. For example, the term female from NCIT is a related match to the term female from Athena. Even though lexically they're exactly the same, the semantics behind the terms are a little different, so we have a related match instead of exact match. And another example is the term neonatal onset from the human phenotype ontology. This is just to indicate when the disease symptoms started showing. This is a broad match to 2 terms from Athena, in our opinion, neonatal and period of onset. But with OMOP, we also notice that we don't have to only do terminology mappings. We can also use their table structure. An example for this is the patient status common data element. So there you have to indicate whether patient is dead or alive. And we use the terms dead and alive from the SIO ontology. But in OMOP, there is something called a death table. So if a person's ID is registered in the death table, it means they're dead. And if that person ID is absent, it means that patient is alive. So based on all of these mappings, we can make RDF. The data itself is in RDF, and the mappings, we can also put that in RDF. And with Sparkle, we can query it in such a way that we make a table that is compliant with the OMOP CDM model. This is just an example, the snippet of RDF with ID, patient ID, and patient sex. And this is just an RDF with the examples of the mappings that I showed before. And then we can generate a table. In OMOP, it's called person table with person ID and gender concept ID. So our solutions to the problems that I was talking about before, for accuracy, we do the best thing to do is, of course, is manual mapping. It was possible for us because it's not a very big a set of terms that we were mappings, but of course this is not scalable. And for representation, we used a standard way of doing it. So they have SSSOM, they have ontologies supporting the tool, and they're doing a lot of work to make sure that, along with the community, to make sure that there's a good way of representing mappings. And we represent them in RDF, so it is machine actionable, and we disseminate on GitHub. And we also, the trickiest one, of course, was updates to the mapping if the underlying terminologies change. We handle that partially by using Athena IDs. So Athena, they keep updating their standardized terminologies. So they have, like, for example, if they have a SNOMED ID, a SNOMED term, the SNOMED ID is different from the Athena ID. So if there are any changes in the SNOMED ontology itself, Athena will still be able to capture those changes with the same ID. So our mapping won't be affected too much by it. And yeah, so we were able to make rare disease interoperable with the OHDSI platform, with mapping of ontologies and semantic web technologies. And what we plan to do next is to collaborate with the OMOP to OBO project. So they are mapping the standardized ontologies in OMOP to standardized terminologies in OMOP to ontologies from OBO. And they have some Python tooling around this, but we're talking to some of the group members, but we haven't fully compared our work to theirs yet. And we also want to use this in a real world scenario with a rare disease registry. So OHDSI, if they give funding to data partners to convert their data into the OMOP CDM, and one of the ERN rare disease registries that we work with has won that funding, and they are currently in the process of converting their data into the CDM. So we want to work with them in the future. And so this work was, of course, not done just by me. We had a team that helped us with this, and also the CD modeling team helped us with the curation a lot. So I'd like to thank you for your attention, and I'm happy to take questions if there are any.
Great talk. Thank you so much. Let me turn on this video so you can see us. Are there any questions in the room that we can take first? Thank you.
So great talk. Thank you very much. I was kind of curious about the role of quantification or other kind of connectives. So the example you used about neonatal onset, you had two terminology mappings, but they were independently broader term mappings. And what you I think wanted to express with that was either something like the union of those two things, or maybe a quality of the onset was neonatal or something like that. So I'm kind of curious how you handle the combination of terms.
Yeah, so right. Are you able to hear echo or something? Or no, it's okay.
All good.
No, okay. The way we do it is simply with SparkQL. So we just build it into. We have some very good experts in SparkQL. So we just are able to write all of these rules into SparkQL. But I must say, we only did it for a small subset of data, and so we did. Our idea, of course, was to start small and then expand. So we did it for a small subset and it works. But for more complicated things, actually, I'm not 100% sure if it works. And we also want to work with real data rather than simulated data. So we are waiting for this ERN, this patient registry that I was talking about, and I'm hoping that we can test it there and then make a full paper from this to see how it actually works in the real world.